taking kids along if you have meetings or business, and why it matters. Money and leadership are learned in rooms, not just books. So you want to make sure that you integrate your kids as much as you can. And exposure really builds that confidence. It builds their vocabulary. It builds their grit. It's going to build up a lot of things along the way. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate. I'm your host, Mike Roeder, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, financial literacy for kids. So think about this stat. If your kids can track their savings rate, just their savings rate at age 10, and from there on out, they'll out-invest most adults by the age of 30. That is a powerful stat. And today I'm going to be sharing our simple real-life playbook. So we're going to be talking about monthly family finance meetings, which we do with our family, real business reps, so things that we do in the business field to get our kids integrated into our business, fun due diligence trips, some of the books that shaped our kids' thinking and our thinking, and then also how we use AI. Really powerful tool, really coming to play right now, and we're going to talk about that as well. So parents, grab your notepad, grab your iPhone with your notes app. Kids, you're invited to this one as well. And before we get started, here's why this matters. Money habits, they start from an early age. And if you think about compound interest, it's not just a concept, it's behavior repeated over time that makes a big, big difference. In financial literacy, it creates a lot of things. It creates freedom. It creates options for kids and for adults. It creates resilience, a good work ethic. And so we're going to talk about all that as well. So for us, our goal at home is to make money talk normal. We want it to be very open with our family. We want it to be positive. We want it to be practical. We never want our kids or our family to feel, nervous or shamed talking about money. So I got a promise for you. By the end of this episode, you'll have a repeatable monthly system if you don't already have one, or a handful of ideas that you can start implementing this week. So I'm going to start off with one of the things in our family that's made the biggest difference in financial literacy. And that's our monthly family finance meeting. And we don't just, implement finance or talk about finance in these meetings. We talk about a lot of other things as well. So we're going to run through this. So let's talk about the cadence. Anywhere from about 30 to 75 minutes is what we allot for our monthly meeting. And, this is going to be dependent on how old your kids are. If you have a child that is 7 years old and 10 years old, it's going to be a little bit different. It's probably going to be shorter than if you have, let's say, a 10 and a 13-year-old like Brianna and I have. We typically spend about an hour, and I feel like that's kind of the max amount of time for a 10-year-old with their maturity. Now, each kid's a little bit different, on the maturity spectrum as well. So you want to judge that. We do the same day each month, and we try to make it fun. So we put snacks on the table. We put some good music on. We keep it upbeat, and that's super important because when you're bringing kids into the mix, the last thing that you want to do is bore them. And all of a sudden they're, really bummed out that they have this monthly meeting. That you want to make sure that they're excited for these meetings. So make sure to tune into that. All right. So the agenda, let's talk about the agenda for the meeting. So the first thing that we start off with is quick wins and losses over the last month. And this is super important because you want to get them excited about the wins, but you also want to talk about the losses or the failures and, what went wrong. What did they learn from that mistake? What can they do moving forward to potentially alleviate those types of mistakes from happening again? And one thing that we haven't done, but I would like to do, is start having your family track those wins and losses throughout the month. So maybe you have a notebook on the counter, and each week or each day, you have your kids jot down one thing. We do that a lot at the dinner table, where we say, hey, what's one thing that you've failed at today, and what was one of the best pieces of today for you? And it really makes them think back on the day and drum up those different things that have went well and that haven't went so well, and then you can elaborate that during your family dinner. We also talk about liquidity and net worth. So this is super important for our family, something that I think a lot of people don't discuss. And each kid shows us their cash on hands. We physically count their cash. We take a look at their savings accounts, their checking accounts, their investments, how their investments have done over the last month. If they have a business, which we've had a few businesses for our kids in the past, you're taking a look at the profit and loss statement, taking a look at their earnings. Did they lose any money? Did they, earn any money? Were they profitable? And then any outstanding IOUs. So one thing that I would strongly recommend is if you're starting up a business with your child, even if it's a little lemonade stand out at the end of the driveway, or, like our daughter's starting up a permanent jewelry business right now. We've had a candy machine business. Whatever it is, you can loan them money. And even if you don't want to charge them interest, loan them money and have them keep that on their balance sheet or on their profit and loss and pay you back over time. That teaches them a very valuable lesson that money just doesn't come free, in the real world. So highly, highly consider that if your kids are, jumping into a business and if you're helping them out with that. We also talk about goals surrounding finances moving forward. So how much do they want to save? How much do they want to invest? How much do they want to earn from their business? All of these are key components during that monthly family meeting that you should talk about. Right. So we also go through an investment review. So our kids share, what they invested in. We take a look at their actual investments. So we'll take a look at, for instance, their cryptocurrency account and what's happened with each of their cryptocurrency holdings. How much has it went up by? How much has it went down by? What happened in the market? You should do the same for stocks if your kids are invested in stocks. And if you don't have any investments, whether it be real estate, stocks, bonds, cryptocurrency, I would go ahead and, set an account up for your child, or even if it's in your name and it's some of their money that you're investing, set that up and track that and talk to your kids about that. And it can be so simple. You can invest in, let's say, 2 stocks. Let's say you have a 12-year-old daughter that's really into Starbucks or really into Lululemon. Make it fun and invest some funds, a little bit of money into those companies, and then track what's happening and learn a little bit about why the stock price is going up or why it's going down, why it's a buy, why it's a hold, why it's a sell. Those are really crucial lessons for your kids. And then also discuss new ideas to consider next month. So what do they want to invest in moving forward? Do they want to consider more crypto, more stocks, another business, a candy machine business or a permanent jewelry business? Do they need to buy more supplies for their business? All of these things can be crucial things to talk about during that family meeting. All right, so another thing that we talk about a lot during our family meetings are core values. So we've been working on fine-tuning our core values over the last few meetings. And so what we're doing is we're selecting about 3 to 5 core values that define our family, define who we are, and we're making them short and concise. And then we're also writing out a full paragraph behind the core value in reference to what they really mean to our family. And you might be asking, gosh, that seems, overwhelming. How did you guys, come up with the core values? And what we did is we did a team session of brainstorming. So on one of our monthly meetings, we came together and said, hey, here's, 40 different examples of what a core value could be, because your kids might need some lessons on what an actual core value is if they haven't heard that term before. And then we sat there for about 20 minutes and we came up with different core values as a family that we liked. And I think we had about 20 different core values that really spoke to us after that session. And then what we did is we went through and we voted our top one, our second option, our third option, and we put, a star next to each of them. They each got, a certain amount of stars. And each person in our family did that. And at the end, we saw which 5 core values were top importance for our family. And so we selected those 5 core values and then we fine-tuned them. We use AI, so we use ChatGPT to really fine-tune them and make them short and concise and really hit home for us. And then we came up with a paragraph for each of them. And then we also use AI, ChatGPT, to really refine those paragraphs to hit home for us as well. So that exercise worked really well for us. We talk about core values on every single one of our monthly family meetings because we want our kids to remember that. It's very, very important for us. And one thing that we're working on is trying to hang these core values up in our house. So right now we just have them on a whiteboard in our basement. We would like to get them framed and up on the wall so that way they're front of mind, front and center for our kids. Another thing that we take a look at during our monthly meeting is our big ass calendar, which is made by Jesse Itzler and his company. We absolutely love it. We get it before the start of every year. And typically Brianna and I will sit down and we'll plan out our entire year. And it's really about planning out, all the fun stuff, all the stuff that's really important to you other than work. And so that way, once you get going during the year, you're not missing out on a lot of those important things that you really want to do during the year. Because what happens is if you don't plan it out, a lot of times you get so inundated by sports, you get so inundated by work and other obligations that all of the critical and most important events tend to fall to the wayside. So I would highly consider getting the big ass calendar or any type of big calendar, planning out your year, and then each week or each month when you have your monthly family meeting, jump into that calendar and review what's on the plan or what's on the schedule for the next 4 to 6 weeks. What are we excited about? school, sports, business pop-ups, due diligence trips, family trips, one-on-one, dates, big events. It's really nice for your kids to see those and then for you to tune in on what's going on as well so you don't miss some of those big items. Another thing that we do is we time block in our digital calendars. So we use Google Calendar and we make sure that we time block all of those events, like our one-on-one dates. Really important that we time block for those. Otherwise, again, they're going to slip to the wayside. You're not going to do them. People are going to be bummed out. And then it almost turns into a bigger negative situation if you miss those types of events. So consider that. And then diving into the one-on-one dates a little bit more. What we've done is we've done one-on-one dates for Brianna and myself, typically on a bi-weekly cadence. And then we also do one-on-one dates with our kids. And it just allows you to connect with your children at a much deeper level. It's really, really been beneficial for us. Again, time block on your calendar, set up those email reminders. So usually, in your digital calendar, you can set up an email reminder the day before. So that way you don't forget, and then set an alarm on your phone as well. Because again, what I find out is if I don't block it and I don't have reminders, I tend to forget about it. And then all of a sudden a month or two goes by and you forget that you should be taking those one-on-one dates. And this has been really, really important for us. Typically, we let our kids choose where they want to go or what they want to do. It makes it a lot of fun for them. And man, just the deeper conversations that you can have with your kids when you're on one of those one-on-one dates, it is just instrumental. So make sure to tune into that as well. I want to share a few tools that have been helpful for us in these monthly meetings. So simple spreadsheet for the kids' net worth tracker. This can be super simple in Excel, or you can even jot it down on paper, tracking the kids' net worth every month. So their investments, their savings account, any other assets or liabilities that they have. And it just sets them up for success once they enter into adulthood. Again, tracking, if you want to be successful in anything, whether it be finance, health, your personal relationships, if you can track it to some extent, that's going to help you be successful in those avenues. Again, the Big Ass Calendar by Jesse Itzler has been super helpful for us. We also do envelopes for the kids. So we have a save envelope, we have an invest envelope, we have a give envelope, and then we have a spend envelope. So anytime our kids make money, they're sticking funds into those different envelopes, different allotments. So that way, when it comes to the end of the month or the end of the year, they're different buckets and they know approximately, what they want to spend in each of those avenues. And the give bucket also allows your kids to really set aside money, and it shows them how important it is to give back to the community. Let them choose their nonprofit, maybe help them out in, guiding them which route they want to go and guiding them into an organization that does a really good job. But if you can let them choose what organization they want to give to, that's been really powerful for us. And then also if they can give it in person, that makes a big difference as well. So if you're just digitally giving, it just doesn't feel the same. Whereas if you can go into the organization, like we've went into Feed My Starving Children, and we do packaging events with our kids. And like last time we were there, Addie took $100 out of her give bucket and she slipped it into, it's like a box with a slot on top if you want to give to that organization. And she just felt so good. You could just see her beaming when she gave that $100 to that organization. So consider going in person if you can. And then a template for the meeting agenda. So if you want us to share our template, it's just a 2-page template. It's been super powerful for us. And it just allows you to set the meeting up for success. Everybody knows exactly what you're going to go through, approximately how much time it's going to take. It has room for notes. So that, is a tool that we've utilized that's worked really well as well. All right. So another thing that I wanted to touch on is making it fun. You need to make these monthly meetings fun, or whatever you do when you're involving your kids in your business or your career, or you're just talking about finances. Try to make it fun, so that way they're looking forward to it the next month. So a few things that we do, when we're doing due diligence trips. So, let's say we're doing due diligence on an apartment or a triple net lease property, or we're doing a site visit. We allow them to, get some of the grab and goes at the site. So if there's like a candy dish or if there's a fun drink, we'll allow them to grab something like that. We take them out to lunch. A lot of times we're letting them choose the spot that they would like to go to lunch. And so it just makes it really fun, during those business trips. Now, if you don't have a piece of real estate that you own or a business that you own, it can still be simple. You could still do a due diligence day where you go and you visit a business, let's say Starbucks or a Target, and you're taking a look at the real estate. You're saying, hey, what do you like about this? What do you not like about it? What condition is it in? How do you like the way that the store is set up? Is there anything that you do differently? How are the team members at the store doing? Did you like their communication? We talk about that all the time when we let's say go to a restaurant. We talk about the servers and how they did, what we liked about what they did. How was their communication? How was the over vibe of the atmosphere? All of those details, like a lot of times you're thinking about them yourselves as an adult, but you're not sharing that with your kids. So share that. Put together savings goals. So as your kids are saving up money, like what's a goal for the month? What would they like to achieve, and how can they get to that goal? Backtrack into it. And then let kids choose the spot that they want to do their monthly meeting. So this has been really good for us, either a favorite spot in the house, or maybe want to go to a restaurant and do it, or like our last one we did out on our boat, and it was super fun and engaging and just a fun vibe. And just get creative. There's some really good ideas out there. Maybe you do a picnic on the lawn. Just mix it up to keep it fun every time. And then another thing you can do is gamify the basics. So, saving streak charts, do small rewards, maybe a reward after 3, 6, 12 months if they hit a certain streak or a certain goal. And then rule of fun for us, end the meeting with something they love. So whether it be a short game, ice cream, movie, surfing behind the boat, whatever it is, try to end the meeting with something fun. So that way they're looking forward, to the next meeting next month. All right, so let's talk about real world experiences. Taking kids along if you have meetings or business, and why it matters. Money and leadership are learned in rooms, not just books. So you want to make sure that you integrate your kids as much as you can. And exposure really builds that confidence. It builds their vocabulary. It builds their grit. It's going to build up a lot of things along the way. So in our business, a few things that we do to integrate our daughters into the business, we include them on secret shops. For instance, our 13-year-old daughter, we have her calling some of the competitive properties for our apartment complexes and asking questions. How much is rent? What type of upgrades do you have? What are the amenities like? What else do you charge? And, the first time that she did that, she was pretty nervous. It was out of her comfort zone. And she, after that first call, she was, again, just beaming that she had completed that and really stepped out of her comfort zone. And I would say anytime that you can push your kids out of their comfort zone, it's a powerful, powerful thing, especially if you do it over and over again, because then they get to, high school, college, out of college, and they're not afraid to jump into a situation where they're out of their comfort zone. We also have them analyzing properties with us every once in a while, doing CapEx walks where they're walking, the apartment complexes after we've renovated them, taking a look at, what needs to be, fixed on the asset. What do they like? What do they dislike? Including them on due diligence trips, going out to the properties when we're buying something, again, tuning into the construction quality, the maintenance, the team, the submarket. We're doing drive-bys. So whenever we drive by apartment complexes, we're talking about what we like and what we don't like, what they could do better and improve upon. And then community events. So we have, quite a few community events across our apartment communities. And one thing that we have coming up here in Minnesota is we're doing a caramel apple event where all the residents are going to be able to make caramel apples. They all get together, they all build that community. So that's something that we're considering bringing our daughters to. First off, they're going to enjoy it because they're getting caramel apples, but also they get to talk to residents. They get to see how we're creating a sense of community at that community. A couple other things that we do include them in networking events. And if you don't have any business networking events, I'm sure there's other events that you go to that you could potentially, include them in, whether it be, a charity event or a golf event or what have you. Try to get your kids integrated into that atmosphere where there's a lot of adults, having adult discussions. We pre-brief, so we talk about handshakes, talk about eye contact, we talk about asking good questions. All of those things are really important. And if you can set the kids up for success, when you go to that event and talk about that beforehand, they're much more likely to do those things that you think are really important. And then we assign a mission. So, do you have a goal for this event? Would you like to meet 2 people that you stay in touch with? What do you want to learn, at this event? And then debrief on the event. What did they learn? What are some of the few big takeaways? And revert back to those notes if you can afterwards, periodically. And one thing that I've found helpful too is just, remind your children to take notes during any sort of networking event or business event, because a lot of times you have so much information coming at you that when you finish up, if you haven't taken notes and you ask them, hey, what did you learn about this event? Sometimes they draw a blank. And so if they have that notepad down, they can review that, and then you can go through some of their top takeaways. Due diligence trips, again, we ask the kids to spot any deferred maintenance, to talk to staff, to listen in on the conversations, go to lunch with the team, note the cleanliness, track how staff greets customers. All of those things are super important. And, one thing that you could do if you have real estate is create a kid due diligence report, have them take some photos, do 3 pros of what they saw during due diligence, 3 cons, and 1 improvement idea. And again, just build in some fun. Go to one of their favorite restaurants. Maybe stop by Starbucks. Our girls love Starbucks, and if we can, create a fun atmosphere that keeps them wanting to come back. And then another thing that we do is we invite them to business dinners with lenders, vendors, team. We have a lunch with a vendor that I have in about a week here in Minnesota, and we have a couple different people from the lender team coming out, myself, and then my daughter. I'll pull her out of school for about an hour and a half, and she'll go to that lunch. She'll learn about the lending environment. She'll learn about communicating in a business and professional atmosphere. We'll be able to talk about it afterwards. And so I know a lot of people are concerned about pulling their kids out of school, but man, if you can involve them in certain types of situations like that, I think it's worth pulling them out of school for a bit of time to get them involved in situations like that. So consider that if you do have business meetings lined up in the future, or again, if you're in a corporate career, I'm sure you have meetings like this every once in a while. And if you do, make sure to include them if you can. And then what I've found is maturity age, including your daughters in those meetings with other vendors, with other team members. About age 10 is where I've seen the maturity level where they can sit through an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours of time and, really tune into what's being said, take away a lot of information. Before age 10, it gets a little bit tricky. I think it does depend on how mature your kid is. Some kids are obviously much more mature at 10 than others. So just keep that in mind as you include your kids. You don't want it to be too overwhelming and too, boring if they're in a situation that's too long for their attention span. So let's talk a little bit about building businesses with your kids. This is one of my favorite ones of all times. Now, it's not easy, but at the same time, the amount of value that you and your kids can get out of it is pretty tremendous. So start out by brainstorming what type of business that your child wants to start. This is really crucial. It takes time, it takes energy. You want to make sure that it's not, sucking too much of your time as the parents, but also that it's going to be profitable, that it's going to be fun, that it's something that they're passionate about. So what we had started out with was a candy machine business. And we had some of the ideas up front where, we wanted to make sure that we weren't driving all around town, to pick up the coin and to restock the candy machines. So what we ended up doing is we ended up placing a candy machine in their gymnastics studio. And we didn't just do the work for them. We made our daughters go in and talk to the business owners at the gym and ask for permission to put that candy machine, in their business. And then we also, had them talk about, their value prop and really pitch that individual. Now, did they get a yes on their first sales appointment? No, they went into a couple of different restaurants and businesses and got shot down. They approached their swim school operation. They said no. We went into a couple local businesses that they said no. And such a valuable lesson handling objections or rejection. And that's something that's going to happen in life. It's going to happen in business. It's going to happen if you're an entrepreneur. And so allowing your kids to really dive in head first and take that on themselves is really critical. Don't do the work for your kids. Allow them to do that themselves. And then when we would go in and we'd, restock the machines, take out the coin, there'd be a bunch of kids walking by, they would talk to them, they would remove, the coin. And it was just a really fun atmosphere. We also put a photo on the candy machine at their gymnastics studio that showed a little bit about who they were and that they created, this candy machine, their ages. And so I think it really got people and parents excited to put some money in that candy machine and help support their business because they were such young entrepreneurs. So play into that a little bit if you can. And then we would track it each month. So we'd take a look at their profit and loss, discuss, how much they made, how much, the cost of goods were. We had one candy machine break, so we had to communicate with the vendor and get a new candy machine, which, we were able to lump in under a warranty. But just allowing them to see the full process. Now, right now, our older daughter, Addie, she's 13. She's starting up a permanent jewelry business. So she has spent a significant amount of time over the last 6 months, putting together her potential client list, the marketing, the website, ordering the product, figuring out the right welder, to purchase, practicing with her business partner, her best friend. And so there's been a lot that's went into that business, and it hasn't even, got started yet. They haven't made a dollar. And they've stuck in thousands of dollars, into this permanent jewelry business. And this just shows an individual that, it doesn't all happen overnight. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to get a business up and running profitably. So make sure to tune into it with your kids. If you can, set aside time to dive into that, even if it's on a weekly basis. And a couple other things that we've done, we're building a lemonade stand with our daughter right now, Reese. She's 9 years old. Just yesterday, I was at Home Depot buying some boards, and luckily we were able to use mostly scrap from our house, because it probably would have cost $300-400 to build this lemonade stand. But we went in, we bought 6 pine boards, and I think it was like $63. And I'm like, Reese, this is part of starting the business. This is a cost of goods. And so we explain that. Funds out of your profits will need to come back to repay that loan. And it made sense in her mind. And again, as much as I just want to give them that money and that product, and not make them pay me back, it's just a critical lesson to understand that money doesn't come free in the real world. You don't get free loans. You don't get free money when you're out there trying to start your own business. So if you can start implementing those ideas and those standards when they're at a young age, it's going to make a big difference. So a few things that we're going to be tracking with the lemonade stand, cost per cup, how much it costs to do like a soft opening, their signage, the actual lemonade stand itself. What can she upsell? What can she add? What can she do to add value to other people out there? And what we were talking about yesterday is just going to Costco and providing, maybe Fiji water or candy bars or a healthy snack, instead of just providing lemonade, where you have customers that come and they're like, gosh, I really don't want to drink a lemonade, but I feel obligated to buy from this person. Provide something of a tremendous value, and you're going to do that much better, and your customers are going to be more happy too. So that's something that we've been discussing as well. We also have a Simply weekly ops huddle that we're looking to do. So what sold, what didn't, what to try next weekend, restocking your product, taking a look at your budget for your product. For instance, on the permanent jewelry business, we want to make sure that the product that she's ordering is the right product. You can get chain that's, $15 per bracelet, or you can get chain that's, $2 per bracelet. What is your customer looking for? Do you want to have, a couple of different product offerings, so that way you have some flexibility for your customer? All of that information is super important to tune into. All right, next topic, books that build money and mindset for kids. So I have a few book recommendations here that have made a pretty large impact on our daughters. And a few of the titles include Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I think a lot of you have heard about that book. Fantastic book, especially if you're reading with your kid. There's just a lot of important lessons in there. There's also a Rich Dad, Poor Dad for kids. So a kid's version of that. They also have cash flow game as well, which has been really critical for our daughters. We've used that quite a bit as well. And then just Monopoly, as simple as it is, it just teaches you the foundation for building assets that produce cash flow. Now, there are some lessons in there that you want to discuss, and point out, I would say some flaws, whereas one person basically wins all the real estate, all the cash at the end, and just explain to your kids that that's not how the world works. You can work as teams, people can own different portions of real estate. There's unlimited amount of opportunity out there. So it's a great game, been around forever. Shoe Dog, that is a great book about Phil Knight, the founder of Nike. And it really dives into grit, perseverance, and just a phenomenal book overall. I would say that's one of our 13-year-old daughter's favorite business books that she's ever read. It's one of my favorites as well. So make sure to check out Shoe Dog if you get the chance. Connor, he does a great job with Tuttle Twins. We actually got the chance to go and see him live in Minneapolis recently with a group of individuals, and he has created a bunch of books, a bunch of series, and just some really powerful information and content that he's put out. So make sure to check out that. We have utilized those in the past too. We have our 13-year-old daughter reading Jesse Cole's Fans First book right now. She's enjoying that. It's about customer obsession and showmanship, and then just breaking out from the ordinary, getting really creative with your business. They created the Savannah Bananas, and they sell out large stadiums over and over again, and it's just the craziest ideas. So also 212 Degrees, a fantastic short book with a lot of quotes and a lot of content about going the extra mile. They talk about growth mindset. They talk about perseverance. Just a fantastic book overall. So we've had our daughters read that, and then we also went through and read it with them as well. Just a wonderful book that one of our management teams gave to us recently. And, it's something that you can revert back to often, or you can even write quotes on the fridge, just some really, really good content there. And then, if a book feels too big for your child, or maybe they're too young to dive into a book by themselves, you can pair audio. So something that I always do is I'll turn on Audible in the car, 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be the whole drive. And then discuss, with your kids what they took away from that audiobook. So like last night, we were on the way home from rock climbing and we were listening to the Steve Jobs documentary. And there's just so many key takeaways from those audiobooks that you can take away with your kids instead of just listening to music all the time or sitting in silence or having them sit on their phone or their iPad. You can really make use of that time in the car. We also use ChatGPT to summarize books. So, if you have a really thick book, or maybe you have a great business book, like for instance, right now, I'm reading The AI Driven Leader by Jeff Woods, fantastic book. And I want our daughters to read it, but it's just a little bit too high level for them. And so what I'll do is I'll summarize that book in ChatGPT in a kid-friendly way. So, you can put into ChatGPT, hey, please summarize this book. Please make it, kid friendly for a 13-year-old and, create a 4-page document. My daughter is, starting a permanent jewelry business, and I really want her to tune in on how to utilize this book and the concepts in it for her business. Spits ChatGPT, a great summary for you to look over with your kids. You can have them highlight, you can have them integrate, into their business or their homework or whatever you'd like to do. And that kind of brings me into my next segment here on this podcast, is talking about kids and AI. So the future is going to include AI very vastly. So you want to make sure that you're talking to your kids about artificial intelligence, that you're teaching them, that you're learning yourself. And, really today it's the calculator for thinking, for building, for research, for outlines, for marketing, for simple data checks, for leadership, for strategy. It's used for so many things, and it's going to continue to, be a bigger part of our lives, moving into the future. So I was just at a recent event out in Beverly Hills, and they were talking a lot about AI. And a couple of the stats that really stood out to me is they said there's 40 million robots in the world right now. And by 2040, so 15 years, not even 15 years, there will be 4 billion robots. So that just shows you how quickly AI is growing. And then they talked about how quickly AI is improving. And they said it is improving by 27 times per year. So if you think about something getting 27 times better, over the course of decades, over the course of 100 years, pretty typical. But when you think about something improving by 27x every single year, it is phenomenal how good AI is getting and how much room we have for progress moving forward and how quickly that's going to move. So make sure you tune into that as well. A few other things that we use AI for: product descriptions, simple flyers, social media posts and drafts, customer FAQs. We use it for school support, so brainstorming, study guides, reading summaries, summarizing books. And one thing that I wanted to talk about that's been really powerful from the AI Driven Leader book, and we're going to start teaching our children about this, is the CRIT model. So it's CRIT. It's been powerful for our company. We've rolled it out with all of our team members. And basically, it's about prompting ChatGPT or other AIs like Gemini on, what you want. So basically, what it stands for is context. So you give the AI bot as much context as you can around what's going on and what you're looking to do, and then you give them their role. So you say, let's say you're coming up with a new marketing campaign for your kids' business, their lemonade stand. Well, you can put in all the context around, hey, here's when we plan on starting the lemonade stand. This is our target market, who we're going to be selling to. This is going to be the approximate price per cup of lemonade. This is how old my child is. This is the state that we live in. This is the season that we're going to be, selling in. That would be the context. And then you give them their role. You are a marketer. You work a lot with, teens, and, essentially you're a professional marketing campaign company, that's going to be doing this. And then you have them interview you. So say, ask me one question at a time to better understand what we're looking to get and to come up, with the task that we're looking you to do. And so it'll ask you one question at a time, and then you'll have them ask another question, and you'll answer those questions, and it will learn what you're looking to achieve, from this session with AI. And then you come up with the task that you want it to do. So, hey, we want you to put together a marketing plan, with this information that we just discussed for our 13-year-olds, lemonade stand, and we want it to include the next 3 months of her operations. So if you do that, it provides a result that is much more reliable and valuable. And you want to put some guardrails in place as well. So, teach your kids that AI is there to assist. It's not just to copy and do all their work. You want to make sure that they're verifying the facts. So check the sources that AI is providing and make sure that AI is providing sources, and then use their ideas. They should be the leader and using AI as a partner, but not the actual leader. So they want to lead AI. They want to use it to generate ideas, campaigns, different information for them, but they also need to put forth the work as well. So let's talk about some common pitfalls to avoid in financial literacy. So number one, over lecturing. I think this is pretty simple. Keep it interactive. Don't over lecture your kids. Make sure that you're selecting the right time frames. If you do a monthly family meeting and it's 3-4 hours long, like your kids are not going to be staying with you that whole time. They're going to be tuned out halfway through. They're not going to enjoy it. They're not going to be looking forward to it in the future. So make sure to tune into that as well. Another pitfall to avoid: hiding mistakes. So share your own misses as a family. What did you miss, as the father or mother? What were some of the misses in the family? What would you do differently? What did you learn from those mistakes? I love Sarah Blakely, the owner of Spank. She sold it, over the last few years for a substantial amount of money. If you don't follow her, make sure to follow her and her husband, Jesse Itzler, just fantastic people. But something her father would ask her every day as she was growing up was, what did you fail at today? And he wanted to dig in and see what they failed at today, what they could do to help alleviate failures like that in the future, and what they learned from their failures. And I just thought that was really interesting, and it's something that we've asked our daughters on the regular. And sometimes it's hard to come up with a failure during the day, but when you can talk about those, man, it is really, really valuable. Another pitfall to avoid: skipping the fun. Fun is the glue that keeps the reps going in these financial literacy meetings or just the financial literacy talks. So make sure to keep it fun. And then moving the goalposts. Make sure that you agree on some simple KPIs, key performance indicators, and celebrate the progress. You're not celebrating perfection, you're celebrating progress over time. We're not here to be perfect. None of us are perfect. So here's a 7-day starter plan. You don't have to go by this day by day, but this just gives you a general outline of what you could do over the next 7 days to get started with financial literacy for your kids. So first off, put your next month's family finance meeting on the calendar. Pick a date that works for you, or you and your spouse, or you and your partner and your kids, and time block that time. Make sure to set up reminders. Make sure to allow your kids to potentially select the spot, select the snacks. Day 2, set up a spend, save, invest, and give back bucket, whether it's a physical or a digital bucket. I would recommend a physical bucket if you can, or buckets or envelopes or whatever you decide to put into place, just because the kids can, actually feel, see, and touch, those goals in those buckets. Day 3, choose one micro business idea and outline roles. Day 4, pick one book and agree on 3 standouts for that book after they read it. If it's too big of a book, have ChatGPT summarize it and have your kids, read the summary. Day 5, plan a mini DD field trip, due diligence field trip. And again, even if it's to a local business, and then assign a 1-page kid DD report. So what did they see at the business that they liked? What could be improved upon? How was the customer service? Have them dig in deep. Day 6, create a shared big calendar view. Could be on the wall, could be digital. I would highly recommend it to be physical, and add one parent-kid date per month if you can on that big calendar. And then day 7, teach a basic AI prompt. Have your kids generate a flyer or a checklist, or maybe that monthly meeting that you're setting up with your kids, have them put together, the overview for the first meeting, and then talk about it as a family. So I just want to give you some encouragement. You don't need to be a finance pro. Just be consistent with your kids. Just start talking about it. It'll start to snowball once you integrate it with your family. Try one meeting this month and one tiny business experiment and see how that goes. And really appreciate you tuning in. Looking forward to receiving some feedback on how this goes for you. Make it fun, keep it real, and compound the reps. Thanks again for tuning in to Keeping It Real Estate. Please leave us a rating and review and pass this along to a friend if you found it valuable. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week on another episode of Keeping It Real Estate.